So for safety reasons, the first thing that we need to do is remove rings. And if you have earrings as well, remove them. Any long hair, please, in a ponytail, so it's safe, you don't get cut. So this is the technical drawing that I prepared for you. And you can find, general dimensions. This is the top view, front view, and lateral view. So if you analyze it for a little bit, you will see that there are some interesting characteristics, but it's pretty simple volume. I guess the main characteristic that is not ordinary is that this is the front side, the front part, and it's slightly smaller than the back part. So you can see these two curves that are opening to the rear. So the other detail that you will see is that I highlighted here what I call an empty space. The idea is that we don't have to build the entire object block solid. That will be lots of material, and it's just a bit of a waste and too much work. So by leaving an empty space inside, you save material, you do it faster. But this is just a reference. You are allowed to, change these dimensions as you see fit. The main reason to do that will be for the material that you will be working on. So we will be doing the same object in different materials, and you will have sheets of materials with different thicknesses. So the idea is how many layers you have to build in order to build this, for example, this first block. That will be one of the sides with this curvature here. So you can adjust this as you find better, find fit with your material. So the next exercise is with styrene. So same goal, we're going to build the same object, building blocks. This time we're going to do it slightly different than before. This time we are going to create these top and bottom going all across. I'm still deciding if this way. I think this way will be better, so you have the full back and the full front, and it's easier then to glue all together. The idea with all these different ways is for you to experiment and find the way that is easier for you. So it's not right or wrong, it's just different experimentations. The whole process is to get your hands skilled with different materials. You know what it feels like and how hard they are and so on. And as well as different ways of building the same object. So you find your own way that suits you best. Okay, so now doing measurements like before and cutting the material. Okay, so for styrene, we will need first 2 blocks. For the front, the whole front is a block of 143, which is the width, 58 the height, and 11 is the thickness here. The rear one is 150 by 15 by 58, which is the height. So the top and the bottom, remember that it will go all the way to the edges, but because it's round, it's not the total width. So this is the width of the top. So it's 138, 10 millimeters in height, and 74 between these two, the front and the rear. The same thing for the one at the bottom, 138 and 34 by 5, which is the height, and 74 the depth. And then the lateral is the total thickness here, but 24 that we have used before, 74 between front and rear, and in this case is between these two, the bottom and the top, which is 44. So we have 2 pieces of 24 by 74 by 44. So now it's all about tracing our styrene and doing the cuts. Okay, so I have here all pieces for the styrene model. So these are the 2 laterals, here. This is the rear, the front, and in this case, this is the bottom. So this will go here, and once these are glued, they will be on top to this distance that then we will mark. So This will be here more or less. This will go on top, and this is the top that will go somewhere like that. And then this one will cover in front, and the other one on the rear. Styrene is a particular plastic. It has this specific glue that is methylene chloride that will melt slightly the surface. So the way that you apply it is by putting this glue on both sides, letting it dry for just a few seconds, 5 to 10 seconds, not much, and then attaching it together. Then you just press, and after, I don't know, probably 10-15 minutes, it will be rock solid, just like one piece of plastic. For that, you need to apply it with a special tool, with a special bottle with this needle. It's very, very runny. It's just like water. And for long-term storage, it's better to leave it in the glass bottle, not in the plastic bottle. So right now this one is empty. So I will have to fill it up a little bit. Well, half of it will be probably more than enough. And after use, I will have to bring it back to the glass bottle. So for this, I put a piece of paper to protect my cutting mats, just in case. But this is no longer wood glue, so we need to be careful. Okay. So all my styrene blocks are glued now. You will see this material is pretty interesting because it's very soft, it's very flexible, but as soon as you glue some layers together, you will see that it becomes quite rigid. It's really nice material to work with. So the way that I organized this, I divided the blocks. We have here the bottom. You will notice that the bottom is not all the way to the edges, but that's fine because it should arrive only from here to here. This is the part that belongs to this. So here, then we'll go these ones on top, the laterals on top. We have the rear and the front, and then this is the top. Okay, it will go something like this. This needs to be slightly out like that. So the next step before before gluing is to sand, because we need to have these edges as flat as possible, so we have a nice contact to glue. And we also need to rectify all the dimensions. So I'm going to sand, for example, these all together. I'm going to clamp them, and sand them all together. So I have the exact same dimension. Styrene is a very soft plastic, and if you go too fast, or even if you really don't go that fast, but the heat with the friction will make the plastic melt, and it will give you this. So be careful because it burns. If you touch it, it's melted plastic, so it will burn. So wait until it cools down, and after that it's quite easy just to break it with your fingers, okay? But watch out because you can burn yourself really badly. So all my styrene pieces are sanded now, and I also trace the center lines. This is the rear, the front, this is the bottom and the top. And in the bottom I also trace the distance in which these two laterals need to be. So you see here the empty space. So I trace these two lines. So this will go here, this will go a line here and here, a line, center line, and then this one goes on top, a line, center line, and then clamped. Careful with that, you can always push it. The way of building this is a bit tricky, but we are ready to glue now. So at some point what we will need is this shape in a solid block. Can be wood or can be cardboard. I'm going to use illustration board, and we will need this some sort of template in order to draw in our pieces. Once our pieces are glued together, we need to draw this shape onto that block so we can start cutting and sanding. And the easiest way is to have a template on the solid rigid material. As I said, can be wood, MDF, or it's a bit complex to do that. If you're maybe planning to do many of these pieces, you do it in a material that is more durable, sturdy, like wood or MDF. In this case, I'm going to use it just for a couple of times, so illustration will be good. Now, you could redraw this shape here, measuring, and with all the radius that will take forever. You could also print one of these sheets, cut this shape, and just retrace using that on top of the paper. That's one way, but I'm going to show you this little trick that I learned when I was in college. So basically, on the other side of your sheet, with a piece with a pencil, just put some carbon, sorry. Just following the line, you can see the line of the printed part. Just add a little bit of carbon like this. Super simple. Like these old carbon copy papers that you may still find, so you could do this with these carbon copy papers, but if you don't have one, this is the way. Just place it on top and just redraw this shape. Don't move the piece of paper, you need to keep it steady all the time. This angle is not very helpful. This position I'm drawing in is not the best. And you should have that piece there. So now we cut it, sand it, and have it ready to use. So my styrene blocks are glued. Is pretty solid. It's pretty sturdy model. Now what is next is to trace the shape of our object and then cut the excess so we can have the top view. For that I created this template, so I just have to put it on top and trace. It's a bit tricky because in the way that I built this model, you don't have the complete surface on top, so we have this little gap. So we need just to bear in mind that the line will go down here and go up again, but making paying attention on that will be not a problem, not a trouble. So tracing and then cutting in the bandsaw. So I have the form traced here. The next step is cutting the excess. We need to first raise or lower the support of the blade. This support is here in order to make the blade more stable, so it doesn't twist or move, which will do, especially if it's far from the base. It will still twist a little bit, so you have to be careful and correct the movement. So you will be pushing and twisting with your hands in order to correct the cutting angle. This material is quite soft, so when you start cutting, the plastic will melt, and after passing the blade, the melted plastic will try to attach itself again, and it's a bit tricky. So you have to go slow, go back and forward, and just be patient. Never try to clean up that with the blade running. Just falls on the other side. This is very hot. Wait until it cools down, and then you try to break it just like that. It's easy when you wait a bit and cools down. Otherwise you will be burning your hand really badly. Okay. Remember to check this is 90 degrees, and after cutting we will follow these lines just to sand and reach the volume that we want. Remember to let it cool, okay? Once it's cool, it's very easy to break. If you try to do it when it's hot, you are only going to burn yourself. This breaks very easily afterwards. The other sanding machine we have, this is obviously sandpaper. This spins and also goes up and down, which is perfect to do these convex shapes. So now that our styrene block is cut and sanded to the shape that we want on the top view, we need to start rounding things. So the bottom is flat, sorry, and the top part has this radius, quite open curve. So we've done this before. We extended this curve with our metallic ruler, just flexing it like this and tracing this line. The projection of our maximum width is here, and we can measure how much of our block we need to cut. But because the way we build this, we don't really have this block. This is part of the radius that we will be taking off later. We need to count this distance we have here for the front block. So measuring this is 70. I measured here, and it turns out that it's just 1 millimeter less, so 5.5. So that's what I did here. I trace both sides. Now I just need to sand it up. So if you see that this is happening when you're sanding, that means that it's too hot and your plastic is just melting and creating bubbles and this completely destroying the volume of the surface. So be careful when you're sanding with the machine. Take a look on your piece from time to time, and if you start seeing these type of things, stop. That means that you need to sand by hand, slower, and not heating up too much the material. Okay, so this is still okay. We just need to sand by hand and get rid of all this. So when sanding, you will start in one direction, but remember that this direction will give you a flat surface like that, but it will be wobbly like that, so not even in this other direction. So after a while sanding like this, you have to change and sand like that. Then you can sand in this direction, but then as well in this direction. So remember always to cross the way that you are sanding and be as rigorous as you can. For the convex surfaces, we can use a roll. I show you how to make these rolls, and it's pretty much the same. You do it one direction, then the other one. Remember always to cross the directions in which you are standing. Find the position that suits you best. You can hold it like that and do this movement. It's very easy with your natural wrist movement, but then change and do the other direction, so you always cross the direction in which you are standing. You can roll it to have a more dense roll. And you can also use the classic one we've been using, just folding it in 3 parts and with your fingers direction, always change direction. So this is what I have so far. You will notice that there are some holes, some textures here. If you actually pass your finger, you can barely feel it. Well, unless there's big holes like this one and this. But these other things, you cannot really feel them. So instead of sanding lots and lots of time, we can fix these little things later. Remember, sanding is not just moving a sandpaper. You're looking for a volume. You are defining a volume. So you need to understand when to stop, and if there is a hole, we can fix it later. For example, here on the bottom, I sanded to flatten it a little bit, but this is lower than this. I can continue sanding and just waste my time. I will have two results, just wasting time. And the other thing is that maybe I will change the dimensions of the object. So once you reach the volume and the dimensions that you want, if you still have these holes, you can fix that later. I'll show you how. So moving ahead, what is next is to do all the rounding of the edges. So the rule is to start with the largest round and then go work your way to the smallest. So we should start with this one, which is the largest, 23 millimeters. We already did this one because it's part of the shape, top view that we started with, but the rest is just basically radius. And the last one will be the one on the front. It's radius 5, which will be all around. But there is a little rule that I want to show you. It's a little trick to make these rounds very fast and very precise as well. So above all, precise. So imagine that you have this angle, no, this block of material, and you want to create this round. So this round, this arc, starts here and here. This is the centrum of this arc. So the first thing that we need to do is, in our blueprints, draw a 45-degree line touching the arc at this point. So right now I'm just imagining this is 45. You will have to use a ruler to be precise. But what this will do is that will give you this intersection, these points here. So the first bit is to trace this line and measure from the edge of your material, of your block, to this distance. Should be the same here and here. So let's call it X and X. So you measure that in your material, you trace it all along the edge, and then you flatten this surface. You create this flat surface that will be touching the center of your arc. In that way you will have two lines, and if you have these two lines, these two edges parallel, you know that the radius is going to be the same all along. If the radius, if these two edges, or the distance between these 2 points, grows or becomes smaller, then you know that it's not as precise. So if it's small, you just have to sand it more until you get the distance. If you went over, well, that's it, because you don't have the chance to add material. Depending on the technique you're using, you may. But that's the first step, getting this distance and getting rid of this first part. Once you have that, the rest is very easy, because you just need to trace where the arc is going to end and start, like these 2 points. You already have the center point here, and then you just sand off using basically the movement of your wrist, the natural movement of your hand, to get rid of these 2 corners, this one and this other one. So if you make the first step, this 45-degree angle surface, you do it precise, this second step is very easy. Okay. So the 45-degree surfaces are traced now. You can see here, this is the top all around and the bottom, and this should be the end result. So now it's time to cut. I think it's better to use a tool like this. I mean, there are different options, but this is for me my favorite. You can try different ones. Just remember that it has a very low melting point, and you can burn the material very easily if you cut it with a bandsaw. Also, by hand is easy to get, you know, the angle that you need, but sometimes you push and everything moves, so you're wasting a lot of energy just moving everything around. Try at some points to set your piece in a vise, and you will feel how big the difference is. You go faster, and maybe it's not as precise. Depends how you set up everything, but can be very precise. Remember to look both sides at the same time. I'm almost there here, and I still need to file a little bit more here, so I need to correct the angle and avoid doing this movement because it needs to be flat. Okay, so I finished the 45-degree surface all around, bottom and top, and I also already trace from the edge that we just created, this one. I measure from here to here is 9 millimeters, no, 9 and 14 gives you 23, so 9 millimeters all around. That will be the beginning of the round. This point here in the middle of this 45 degrees is the point that is touching the arc, the round. I trace that as well. So you basically have to sand this edge off, now giving that curvature. And the trick here is to never erase these lines. If you erase those lines, means that you are sanding where you shouldn't. So remember, what we are trying to do is just get rid of this triangle, this material that we have still here. You can see it here. I traced this as well. So I have rounded everything. If you do the first step, the 45-degree surface correctly, this next step, the following step, is super easy. You manage to get really nice round very, very fast, very, very easily, and above all, precise. If you look carefully, it's not completely there yet, and that's on purpose because I'm using the file that leaves all these scratches, and I still need to get rid of this and get the final surface that I want. And that's only by hand with the sandpaper, same thing that we've been using. This is 1/4 of a sheet, folded in 3, so you have traction. And the idea with this is just follow the natural movements of your hand. Sand in one direction like this, and then cross on the other direction, so you get, you know, crossing the errors that your hand naturally makes. Try to keep these lines still, but if at the end you erase them, that's fine, because that's it, you got there. That's all we need to do. So now it's all sanded, feels really nice. Still some scratches, but still need to be sanded a bit more. But it's getting there. Some defects from construction that we will fix later. I'll show you later how to do that. There is one last thing that we need to do, and is this small radius of 5. We follow the same procedure. We draw the 45-degree line and measure how much we need to mark here to make a 45-degree surface. In this case, it's 3 millimeters. I already measured it. So here you have, this is the line, and this is the other line, and then I will flatten this out. Don't jump steps. Do the 45-degree surface before trying to round. Okay. in order to make it precise, you need to do all these steps. So 45 all around, 45 degrees surface. So now it's finished here, this edge as well, rounded. I did first the 45 degrees flat surface, then I rounded the last two edges, first with the file and then with the sandpaper. Remember, one side like this and then crossing to the other direction all around, and now looks really nice. This is it. This is the volume that I wanted. Now there are many issues, many little spots that the surface has, like spots, like dents, and we're going to fix those. I'm going to show you how. The first thing that is important to do is pass your hand through it, through all your volume, all the object, and mark where these holes are, just like that. It's important to take our time and mark all these areas where you want to add material. We're going to be adding a material to fix these little details and end up having the smoothest possible surface. For example, these ones here. There are some that are scratches from the sandpaper. I wouldn't worry too much about them. We still need to sand quite a bit. Just the big holes that we've been dragging for since we started cutting this object in the band. So here, and for example here, this is a problem that started from the moment we glued all these together. So all this needs to be filled up. Instead of sanding and modifying at the end the volume that we want, we just fill it up. Okay, let's start with these ones. Now we're going to use, it's commonly known as Bondo. The technical name is plastic filler. I hope it's in focus. This is just one brand. There are many different brands. It's normally used for dents in cars. Lightweight auto body filler. It glues amazingly well, it attaches amazingly well to almost anything, but it's particularly good with steel and plastics like styrene. And it is applied with spatula, and I normally recommend to use a cutting board that, I bought this in the supermarket for $5. And the body filler is soft, you will see it in a moment, and gets hardened with this hardener cream. So the way it works is pretty simple. So I just have to take a little bit out of the can, not much because we're just filling up really tiny holes, and apply it in your cutting board. Now try to be as clean as possible. So this needs to be cleaned up, just like that. Now the proportion is a bit tricky. It's all about experience. Just look at that. Imagine, I don't know, a cupcake and the cherry on top. That could be more or less the proportion. So you see the filler is gray and the cream is blue. So when you start mixing, you should do something like this. It will change colors, obviously. And with time and experience, you will see that if it's too blue, it will harden too fast and it will be very brittle, and you won't have enough time to work with this. So after mixed, you have like 5 minutes to apply. Once you start feeling that is getting hard, stop working with it. You're just going to mess things up. So that's it, it's ready. Now the idea is to fill up gaps, so don't grab a bunch and just apply it. Grab the little bit that you need and use the spatula to support the spatula on the parts that you don't need, and just apply where it's needed. Something like that. Is in excess, it's okay, that's okay, that's the way to go. This sands very easily, so we can just apply a little bit in excess and get rid of the the material later with sandpaper. So this is commonly known as Bondo. It's just another brand now, just people know it as Bondo, the plastic filler. So I have all these little corners here, gaps. I grabbed too much this time. Now we will need more for this part. Now here, what you can do is apply like this, all along. Clean your spatula, always clean your spatula. You need to have a clean tool in order to make it work. So now it's clean. Now just do like this. Get rid of the excess, and that's it, just one go. If you think there are still holes, don't try to apply it again because you will peel off the layer that was underneath. So just wait until it dries, and the idea is to work your way up slowly. Now I can feel now it's starting to get hard. You can see here it's getting kind of sandy, if it had sand on it. That's it, stop, don't do anymore. We'll just get things messed up. So you can see here the green parts I sanded. So the greens are the holes that were covered. You can see this detail, for example, here on the side. This one here, maybe on the video you used to see green and white, and it's hard to understand if this is actually a flat surface, but to my touch it's just perfectly smooth, has no bumps, feels really great. So it's pretty much there. I mean, there are a couple of extra holes that I could cover. Before doing that, I'm gonna sand the last sanding with probably 600. You can add water when sanding with sandpaper as high as 600, and the finishing will be just pretty amazing. Once that is done, you can then check what other holes and gaps, things you still have, and then make a final retouch. But this is it. This is the way you do it, and we are pretty much finished with the styrene model. There are other things to do, but that will be for other courses, other videos.